Twin Bears. I lived
Right. There
under
we go.
Ken Livingston.
Hmm.
That was in the early noughties, and under Boris Johnson twice, and under Sadiq Khan now we've had for about 4.5 years. Who's dreadful. And the best mayor we had was Johnson. He was amazing. Everything he did was amazing. He loved London. He made the city safe. He made the city profitable and productive. I loved it. And
Right.
since you guys come into town, it's terrible. The crime is terrible. Businesses. This is pre-COVID. Pre-COVID.
Oh no,
And
I
I
follow.
thought he'd make a great prime minister. I thought he'd be amazing. And on the Brexit thing, on the EU thing, he's been fantastic. But on the COVID thing, like many people, they've just completely effed it up awfully. You
uh,
know.
it's I think everybody overextended the reach,
Mm,
and really, um, I think it was an opportunity for some of the political powers. I don't know about your area, but I know in here to go with that tyrannical rule, um, and they have yet to let up, and they're going to
yeah.
find out the hard way
Yeah.
in a little bit that people don't like to be told what to do.
Well, let's hope so because I work in healthcare, so I I had to go to work throughout the whole thing. When everybody was on lockdown, I was at work and I was walking to work 6 miles and
Right,
6 miles there and back every day. Just one, because I liked it, and two, they asked us to stay off public transport. I thought, well, it's a good opportunity. Why don't you walk?
right,
But I had to take buses and trains sometimes, and then they were asking us to wear gloves. Please wear gloves on the bus or on the
right,
train. No masks. And all the way through, even in healthcare, they were saying to our private workers, no, don't use the masks yet. Don't use the masks. The government was saying this. You don't need masks. They're ineffectual.
right,
Don't help. And then you could see all the cases dropping down. Okay, and it's okay. It's clear we're coming out of this thing. It's obvious.
right.
And suddenly, wear masks on the bus. And then suddenly, wear masks in the shops now. Now, we don't have to wear them when we go out into the street. It's if you're going into a certain shop
Right,
or
right,
if you're
right,
on
right, right.
public transport. Fine. But to me, it's the problem with politics is this, is that politicians are politicians for a reason, not because they care about stuff. And
Yep.
when I vote for a politician, I don't vote for them because I think they're a good person. It just their politics at that time seem beneficial to my way of thinking, to whatever
Right.
the furthest point it can be. Let me vote. So I voted for Johnson. And at the beginning, he said, "Let's take it on the chin like Sweden, herd immunity." And we're like, "Yes, go for it." And he got a lot of he got a kickback. Then he caught it and he changed his mind. And I think we've got the same statistical numbers as Sweden anyway. You know that, and they didn't
Yep.
lock down at all.
Well, you look
But
at
now we've got the
Sweden, and
biggest recession in all of our history about to
that's
happen.
that's that's the problem. And a lot of
Yeah,
people, not only in the UK, but in
yeah.
around the world, and even in this country, said we should never have stopped
Oh,
being and doing what we're doing. Um, Look, this is we already know in the U.S.
it's obvious.
there's you have about 60 to 70,000 every year that are going to catch the influenza,
That's
and
right.
they're going to die from it.
Yeah,
It's usually the older or the young or the frail. Then you got another about 60, 70,000 that are going to get pneumonia and die
mm,
from it. So we're I mean, if you look at the deaths in for this, which is, let's call it what it is,
yeah,
which is SARS-2 and
yeah,
not really COVID.
yeah,
It's in line with what should have been.
yeah,
Now, don't get me wrong. It's better to be safer than sorry. If you go into a
yeah.
small space like an elevator, it doesn't hurt to cover up.
No,
We wash all our food when we get it.
yeah,
Take it home, clean it before putting it away, and just because we take our shoes off, spray them, keep them at the door, and a little bit more cautious is fine. But I think everybody went over the board,
yeah,
and because of this, because of being away from so many people, your immunity drops. When you use the mask, your immunity drops, and now we're prime candidates. A lot of us, not me. I mean, I always, if I don't have to wear the mask, if I go outside, I'm not putting a mask on. My kids, I tell them, take
yeah,
it off, because you should only be using it in situations where you need to. If you look at hospitals and doctors, when they're doing a surgery and they're wearing they're doing a 12-hour operation, First of all, the temperature in that surgery unit is probably 60 degrees, okay, which makes
Yeah.
it a lot easier to deal with and breathe.
Yeah.
And I've talked to a couple of the surgeons who have had oxygen going at the same time.
Yeah.
The surgeons that I talked to, they tape their mask over here
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
top, and then some of them will put every once in a while they'll get a little fresh oxygen in there,
Yeah.
take a break, and they're back in the game. We're not doing that. All we're doing is, I think the reason why they said wear a mask is, I think people want to see how far they can go before people are going to start rebelling.
It's crazy. Now, similarly, I've worked in healthcare for over 10 years.
Yeah.
I know just how ineffective those masks are. And now it's got something, and most surgeons they don't use it for the whole surgery. It's for certain parts of the surgery, if there's
Right.
and it's to protect them, not the
Right.
patient.
100%. And I think it would have been better if people used the face shield, actually.
Yeah, much better.
I think something like that where, and everybody's like, well, you still get the flow going in. Now,
You get
yeah,
it
you
anyway.
do, but you're going to get it. Okay, so if you didn't get it through your mask, you have these things called eyes and
Yeah.
ears. And
Why
it
aren't
can,
why aren't we wearing protective glasses and
yeah,
earplugs?
exactly.
Well, we are. I
Exactly.
mean, I suppose in London and in New York it's probably the same. I never go out without a headset on because, God forbid, somebody should speak to you and you speak back to them. But uh, you know, then
God forbid we should be civil.
that's just normal London life. But yeah, where about the glasses? So I'm thinking, I did see some people. They had a mask, they had glasses, they had gloves, and everything, and they looked like they were in some sort of internal torture walking on the shopping center. And I thought, just order online, give yourself a break. Um,
Yeah.
and I guess this is the point, really. Eventually, now I went into central London. I used to work on Harley Street, very famous medical district in London,
Right.
private medical district. I worked there for 8 years, and I had to go into the London Clinic to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I went down Harley Street, and this is near Oxford Street. This is a very famous big
I know.
street, center of
Oh,
London,
yeah.
not far
Oh,
from
yeah.
Piccadilly Circus and those places. And it was dead. There was never more than 3 people on the train with me at any one point.
Yep.
All the cafes and stores I used to go to had like bailiff signs in the windows. They were closed down. There was nobody in the street. I was just like, this is London.
This is
And
depressing.
New
That's
York
what
is
it
the
is.
same, right? New York is the
Same,
same.
same thing. Well, we have a lot of rioting going on right now
Yeah.
because the person that's in charge is an absolute idiot.
Yeah, de
But
Blasio. I know who that is.
oh
Yeah.
my God. But
Yeah.
it's funny. I watched this guy on London Real,
Uh,
and he goes out all the time. He's always taking pictures and video around London. I know the city. I love the city.
yeah.
It's a bit too expensive for me, but I still love the place. I
Yeah.
spent many months there.
Yeah.
And he's on a tube, and he's the only one in the tube. He's
Yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
only one in the
Yeah.
tube. And
Yeah.
and it's like, now the plus part of this
Oh, I
is
think you're talking
people.
about Maya Tusi.
No. His name is Brian. Oh God, Brian. I forgot his name, but he has a program called London Real.
Oh, London Real.
Um,
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
He's on. I forgot his last name. He had on one of the favorites, David Icke, and then they shut him
Oh,
down,
yeah.
and they
Yeah.
pulled him from
I know who
TV.
that is now.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but he walks around the street all the time, no face masks,
Yeah.
which I highly recommend because
Most people don't
even
wear them here.
you don't
More
need
more
it.
people are, but generally speaking, because it's not a rule, most people aren't doing that.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
if you have to go into a store, I think it's respectful because people will have heart attacks if you go in without a mask on.
But
I
they
mean,
won't let you
God
in.
forbid.
Yeah.
Well, in here, they'll stop you now. They'll become
Okay.
very militant about it. But it's
Yeah.
funny. I do something that I'm working on stopping now is smoking, which is bad. But I'm stressed out, so for other reasons. But you get a little bit of a smoker's cough, and I also have
Yeah.
allergies, big time.
Okay.
So I remember being in the supermarket and I coughed, and people just look at you like,
Yeah.
I'm like, smoker's cough. We're good. You're gonna have a heart attack before you die from any virus. Okay, just bring it in, bring it down a level, people.
I mean, really, it's the paranoia. It hasn't been as well, at least in the area I'm in, hasn't been as vociferous, and most of the people here are quite sensible and very naturally social distance even before COVID. Um,
Yeah,
but So there was a joke, and I think I've told you this several times, that my wife said when the social distancing was introduced, first of all, she said finally the English will realize that they've been social distancing all along.
100%. Very proper, polite, seem to mind their own, which
Mostly
is
just mind
this.
their own business. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Unfortunately, in the States, everybody seems to have an opinion,
yeah.
um, and their opinion matters more than you do, and they'll tell you. Or the new thing, which I don't like, is very Nazi-ish. Um, Rat on your neighbor.
Oh no!
Oh, you see someone without a mask, take a picture and send it to us. It's okay. No,
Wow, who's doing
no.
that? Is that a De
A
Blasio
lot of
thing?
people, a lot of,
Is there somewhere to
a lot
send
of,
it?
yes, a lot of these governors have
Wow.
set up hotlines so you can rat on your neighbor
Yeah,
because they chose to go outside and enjoy vitamin D coming down at them,
wow.
killing the virus if there
Yeah,
is one,
yeah.
and they're not wearing a mask, you
Wow.
know. And I think what happens is you get people that are so afraid right now and really are buying into the hysteria and the
Yeah, yeah.
hyperbole. Um, and it's almost a mentality, well, if I can't enjoy myself, you can't either.
I
But they
think it.
won't admit
Yeah,
to that,
yeah,
you know. It's just insanity. I just want to. I want rationale to come back in thought and processing. This
yeah.
is a technically this is a class 2 virus if you want to look at it.
No, I've looked
Okay.
at it. I've looked at it, and it's
Yeah.
I mean, you would be seeing, and we both know this, and I know this is a cryptid show, but I think it's relevant. It's
Sorry about
current.
that, folks.
It doesn't matter. It's just for chatting anyway. But yeah, that's all the show's about. Just chatting, a bit of
Sure.
nepotism and chatting with friends, and
That's fine.
looking at this thing and understanding. I've had a lot of friends who work for the Tropical Disease Center here in London and
Oh yeah.
being epidemiologists, and they've said this is just a pretty bad flu. Basically, it's worse than a normal flu. It's a bit more
Yes.
transmissible, but you're talking about the same kind of numbers, the same kind of people are affected. Apart from, strangely, very young people not affected at all. Which with the flu, it does actually affect very, very young people. It can be
Yes.
bad, and so really not as worse as the flu on its whole on the whole spectrum of things. And you'd be seeing coffins lining the streets. Everybody would know somebody who died. Do you know anybody who's died?
Right.
I'm
Yes,
sure
I do
people do.
actually.
Oh, you do.
Um,
Okay.
I do. My wife's best friend growing up,
Okay.
she had it. Her daughter had it, who was about 10,
Okay.
and her ex-husband, and they were kind of quarantined themselves, and they've had it. They described typically um, the flu-like symptoms, but they also described the burning of the lungs, which is very reminiscent of
Yeah.
pneumonia.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what this basically is. It's flu with pneumonia.
Yeah.
Okay, and then her mother got it, and she had really bad medical issues,
Yeah.
diabetes and some other stuff, and she asked for the HCQ. I'm not going to mention it, but
Yeah.
whatever. They denied her that, and then she did pass from it.
Yeah.
But she didn't, she literally stayed for a long, long while without having, being on they wanted to put her on a
Ventilator. Yeah.
respirator. Yeah, yeah. No, she said no. And then they wanted to, what do you call it? All these different things. She said no, no,
Intubate
no,
her.
no. And
Yeah.
eventually, yeah,
Yeah.
she succumbed to it. It's really sad because when they went to the funeral service for
Yeah.
her, um, there there were only allowed 10 people in total, and that includes the official. I believe there was a rabbi there, or a priest. One of the two was there. She was kind of very more spiritual than anything, and it makes it difficult. And we've been hanging out with them for weeks. We're
Okay.
fine. I actually believe she did succumb to it. About a year and a half ago, there's always some mystery element that's flying around,
Yeah.
and about a year and a half ago, um, my wife and I kind of got something. You have kids and I have kids, so
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
something going around school, we're eventually going
We
to
get
get
it.
something, and I usually get a bronchitis or something. So she was feeling it, and I'm like, wow, I feel achy. This is probably flu-like, and and the breathing was sucked,
Yeah.
congestion-wise, part of the expression. wasn't a medical term, sucked, but basically that just described it.
Yeah, we use
And
that all the time.
yeah, after a while, my wife, who doesn't complain about it much, we took her to a doctor in the box.
Yeah.
That's what we call those emergency places. And they did a test for flu, nothing. She got a Z-Pack, I think an inhaler.
Yeah.
And then when she went home,
Yeah.
and in like 2 weeks, she was, well, in a week, she was over the initial, like, I feel like junk. And then it took her like another week more to really get over the coughing and the other stuff that goes along with it. I had it too, and I tried to hold that a little bit longer, like an idiot. And then I went back there and we tested. No flu whatsoever. I got talked down by someone who was younger than me that I shouldn't smoke, and I'm like, look, just give me the drugs, and let me move on.
Yeah.
And with that said, I got a Z-Pack, got an inhaler. It took a little bit longer than normal. That's, these diseases, once you'll get something a year that kind of should have been a 2-week thing. It went really to 4-week. But everything they were describing in this COVID thing is basically what we were getting. And then my youngest, who gets the flu shot, and mind you, I don't take the flu shot. I don't.
Yeah.
Neither does my wife. But my kids, we give it to them. They swabbed her, and as they're putting it in, as it got as close as you can before inserting it, it popped up A and B flu.
Wow.
So they gave her the Tamiflu stuff, which is if you have kids, it's very fun to watch them react to that.
Okay.
I mean, they're like delusional for a day, and then they're back to normal.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people have had this disease, this virus, besides what was released, and that's why also not as many people were getting it. I think this has flown
a lot of
through
people already
many
have
people.
some form of coronavirus immunity, and I'm wondering if other similar forms of it give you an immunity to this one. Probably that's the theory that's going around.
Right.
However, sort of accurate or inaccurate that might be. Now, this actually comes onto another subject here, and we're talking about this coronavirus thing.
We'll get rid of the coronavirus now.
Well, it sort of, I think, impacts upon the future, isn't it? So it's coronavirus and cryptid conferences. Now, we were some guys that were expecting to do a few appearances this year, and many other people were in the community, of course. And what you realize with a lot of people, actually, even a lot of the big names out there, that it's actually the conferences are their bread and butter. They're what pays their way. And however, it really,
a lot of people,
looking at the future, it doesn't look like things are going to come back. It looks like everything's moving online. And in doing so, you kind of lose the money because and I'm wondering what your opinion is on this. Presently, if they keep pushing it in this direction, it doesn't look like we'll ever be able to accommodate the kind of numbers you need to make it work. So where do we go from here?
Well, I commented somebody on Twitter that a paranormal conference online is not a paranormal conference.
Yeah.
And I got some blowback from them, like, well, due to the COVID, and like, look, you know what I personally think is going to happen is the following. I think there's a certain individual in this country which was on the left side of it. If that group gets into office, it's going to continue and it's going to get worse. To forget conferences, it's going to be mandatory vaccinations, control. If the other person who's currently there stays there, I think, if you really look at the accomplishment, I think you're going to get freedom returning again, your constitutional rights in this country. And I think people are going to be like, it's a virus, we can get on it. It's just like getting a cold or the flu, move on. I think initially it's going to be a little bit, people are going to be, wait, I don't know if I'm going to come back, but there's going to be a couple people that just take that plunge. And it's going to be back because people are starving for attention and they're starving for interaction. Now, granted, some of the older folks that are experts in these fields, and I use the term loosely, expert, but para celebrities, whatever you want to call them, they have to always guard their health. And look, be smart about it. We can have you on a live feed at that point. Okay. And you can have a representative that's younger than you come in, have your table, and you can interact with the live feed, and you can do a pretty good job with that. Maybe they have to sign something and mail it out, whatever. But I do think these conferences are going to come back. I do think it's going to take a little bit of time, but I think come next year, I think people are going to be like, it's going to be like other things. You remember when
Yeah.
we all hid inside
Yeah.
because of this, but and it's going to happen. It's going to, people are going to wake up and say, no, we're not going to do this again. See, this is another problem though, because of the way they overreacted. When something really, really serious happens, they're not going to get the respect from the people that they need to put in
Well,
place.
I
So
think
it's a double-edged
the
sword.
U-turns and the uh, the changes on advice, the masks on,
Yeah.
masks off, hydroxy, remdesivir, whatever else is that they're doing. It's everybody. I think what stood out to me about this whole thing is it's a time when really nobody should have been politicking, but
Yep.
everybody has been, and I think people will remember that when we're in our worst moment, you all just kept politicking, and people are tired of it.
Not everybody.
Yeah,
There have been I've seen some people and they weren't politicking. They were trying their best to come up with solutions
yeah,
to like, which is what you should be doing. We should be coming together and what do you call, brainstorming.
yeah,
Now, I've been watching. See, this is the funny thing. One of the problems with this whole disease thing or the virus thing is
uh-huh.
it prevents all of us from getting in the field and doing
Yeah.
research like
That's
we
the
want to
main
do.
thing. Yeah,
That's a huge problem with this field because there is no research. It's very little research. Some people are afraid, and I get it. But I've been following this, and I was following this for not this September, from last September. I watched what's going on because I'm one of the guys that wants the people in Hong Kong to say, no, we're not going to do this and restore Hong Kong's freedoms and
oh
whatever.
yeah, yeah,
So I watched this. I think in September of last year, I posted something, which was, and I reiterated it. I said, China is about to give the United States the greatest gift they could ever receive, manufacturing, because we're going to have to start manufacturing stuff
yeah,
here if there's a virus there, which is basically what's taking place. So there were people around the globe. I forgot the doctor's name in France that was having a lot of success with HCQ.
yeah,
There are other places that are having success. And it's not just that one thing. It's that plus Zithromax plus zinc
yeah.
is a huge component to this. But there are other now components instead of HCQ. I forgot the one with it begins with a P and I forgot the name of it.
I
But
don't
they're
know.
having great,
Yeah,
results with this. Again, people protected from it, coming out of it, never not getting it again, not being reinfected. So there were people, and they give them such a hard time, but our current president mentioned it. And he also mentioned light therapy, which is very
yeah,
interesting because there is a company that will, through innovation, they will put the tube you use to intubate has UV lighting in it.
uh-huh.
And basically, what you're doing is it's kind of like dialysis for the lungs,
Yeah,
and you're cleaning the air when you're going through. So, because UV light is a killer. It's a killer of it. But they gave this guy so much crap, and they made fun of. Oh, he wants you to drink bleach. I'm like, he never said that. And that's the politic, and that was the bad side.
I mean, it's a
Um,
shame that it happened in an election year for you guys. I guess. I mean, from the cryptozoologist point of view, I think you're right. Even
right.
here, the research has really dipped down.
So
People have stayed in their areas. But myself, and Chris Turner, we were going to head up to Scotland, and then there was an outbreak in the north here, and their first minister, because we have devolved nations in the UK,
right,
of Scotland, the government of Scotland said, well, actually, we're closing the border to the north here. Um, and it just seemed too testy, really, for me that, okay, well, we'll book all of even if we fly in, we'll book all of the hotels, we'll do everything. And then suddenly, she's just going to close it down. It could happen. And of course, they want
right,
independence. So they're using every single thing they can to make their own rules and laws of everything. That's what's
right.
happening in the UK right now. So there's a lot of politics going on. We could just stay in our area. I could stay in England. I could do stuff here. It's fine. But there's something that's just kept people in, even though it hasn't been since the lockdown ended. There hasn't been a strict any sort of strictness about movement. There's little things
Right.
about Cornwall now and again that everybody's swamping to the beaches and holiday camps, and why wouldn't they be? That's my question, really. They've been locked in for 4 or 5 months. Sure, they're
Right.
going to swamp down to the beach. And for these local neighborhoods who are complaining, people in Cornwall and other coastal areas, well, look, these guys kind of keep you alive most of the year, and you're going to have to get back to it. But my big question is, moving away from that, what's going to
Right.
happen to a cryptozoologist? Is it just a lost year? I mean, we're in September already. Do we just cancel it and say, see you next year? Or are we fooling ourselves to think that next year the whole world will be completely changed? And should we start adapting to these new ways of doing things just in case to get the jump on it?
I think what we're doing right now, actually, yeah, one of the big events that we have in this area on the East Coast is a place called Pine Bush.
Yeah.
It's the UFO capital of the East Coast. It's where Whitley Strieber had his cabin. He had
Oh,
the
yeah.
abduction, the communion thing there, and they have a festival every year. And for about 6 years ago, uh, the group that I was with and I'm still with, Bronxville Paranormal Society, we started the paranormal um, museum, the paranormal room, and we started giving other alternatives just to UFOs. They have a
Uh,
fair every year, and we gave presentations. Actually, Hans Holzer's daughter, who's wonderful, Alexandria Holzer, she's a fabulous person. She gave a presentation the first year, um, and it was off the charts. We were doing really good there, and we were there. I wasn't there last year, but my friend Al was there representing there. But 2 years ago, every year we did like presentations. So we did 3 hour long presentations and 3 half-an-hour presentations, just to and then
mhm.
that night 2 years ago, I did a CE5, which stands for Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind.
Uh-huh.
It's an active encounter where you use your consciousness and your mental thought and your goodwill to say, listen, we want to have an interaction. You exist, you can hear us. Come down and let's see what you can do. That type of thing. Very peaceful related. So we were wiped out. By the end of that day, we were up at like 4 in the morning. This thing wasn't taking place till 10, 11 o'clock at night, and we were done. But fortunately, some people came, and like I didn't want to disappoint them, so we drove out to where we were supposed to do, which is down the street from this area, and we were greeted by 60 plus people, families included, that were
Great.
there. So like, okay, we got to do it. I was being interviewed by German TV7, which is odd, and then again. About 30 other people, 40 other people came by after they had conference, like speaker talks. So we sat there and we actively had this. I had to bring everybody down. It was my show. I was like, it's all you. And try to take the day out of, take the excitement out. Let's
Yeah.
breathe. Let's close our eyes. And what we're trying to do is mentally, it's a 50-50 shot whether it works or not. You're saying in your mind, saying, I'd really like to meet you. I would like, if you do exist, you crafts and these aliens and whatever it is, can you please come down here and interact with us?
Uh-huh.
And at one point, we're sitting there, and it's very quiet. It's about 15 to 20 minutes into me getting everybody down, and everybody's kind of focusing. I heard this ruckus to the right, to the left of me, and there was a little field there, and I was just about to say it sounded like hooting and hollering, like some kids drinking, beers and
Oh, yeah.
having a good time, and I was just about to turn to my buddy Al and go, Al, what's that hooting and hollering? When this guy comes out of that direction, he goes, did everybody hear the owls? And we're like, yeah, we just heard it. And as soon as we said we just heard it, above our heads, a giant light and craft appeared. And everybody's like, ooh, ah. And it was a large white dome. Um, and you could see that there was like a hexagonal type of support to
Uh-huh.
that dome.
Yeah.
You could see the darkness of the craft, and then where the sky was, the stars. And we already could see in this direction for 50 to possibly 100 miles. Beautiful sky. The air traffic was in one direction. We knew exactly where it was. And this craft's above our heads. I got to be honest, I've been investigating these things for a long time. It blew me away that it happened. It was signaling back to us. We'd do the signals with flashlights. And it signaled back. And then we asked it to can you do some acrobatics? And it went out and it shot left, right, and up and down. And then it came back, and the whole thing lasted for 15 minutes. Of
Wow.
course, TV7 left 20 minutes prior to that, they just did a 5-minute interview, and they're like, let's get out of here. It was a joke piece for them. There was a police officer there, and we're going to try to talk to him. But everybody that was there witnessed this. It was incredible, unbelievable, and we were going to try to do it again this year.
Uh-huh.
The whole town, because of the virus, they canceled the outdoor festival, which is not that big. It's a street fair. Canceled it. They just did something last night, which was speaker conference. So they sold 50 tickets for people to go indoors and sit near each other, to have 3 speakers, which are fantastic speakers.
Yeah.
Mark D'Antonio is out of this world. Linda Zimmerman and Chris. Sorry, Chris, I forgot your last name. I was going to say DePino, whatever. Great guest, KGRA people.
Uh-huh.
And we were supposed to do it after that night, but they canceled us, and they said, "Do you want your own?" Because I was having Ron Murphy come out with us.
Uh-huh.
And Ronald is another one of those. He's a research investigator, author, cryptozoologist, parahistorian, mind you, that really makes his money on book sales and these conferences. So he's like, yeah. So now on October 2nd, we're having our own CE5. They're going to do a special thing for us. And we're going to get people to come out. And we're going to tell people, come out. Experience this. Hopefully by then, I doubt it'll happen. Maybe it'll be a little bit lightning. Maybe they can sell 75 tickets.
Okay.
Every state is different. Just like in your Wales has their own philosophy. Scotland has their own philosophy.
Well, Wales
Islands and islands.
has for the first time implicated its own quarantine laws against Portugal and Greece, and that's the first time they've deviated from England. My mother just flew back in from Greece, and she said we found out on the plane that we had to quarantine for 2 weeks when we came back because Wales had imposed this quarantine law with a spike in cases. Now, going back onto that again, it's so current. It does dominate everything everybody talks about. I realize that sounds fascinating, especially with this craft and the fact that you're able to get it to essentially appear in front of all of those witnesses. So you would be attempting to replicate that this year?
We're going to do another CE5. Someone who does it all the time, I think, Dr. Stephen Greer makes a big to-do about CE5s and how he created the protocols. And, he has, I'm like, no offense to anybody, and I'm not one of those guys that, he didn't create them. The close encounter, stages have always been in place.
Yeah.
Okay? He does something and, he tried the active and he, of course, whatever worked for him. Okay? But he's not the inventor. This is something anybody can do. Be careful what you wish for, though.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what you're going to call in there. But yes, this is an active encounter. And if you use the philosophy like monks do this, where they get together and they start praying for peace as a unison, as a group, it does seem to have effect with the energy that translates throughout the globe. So we're pretty much doing the same thing where we're saying mentally and using your conscious to say, listen, we really would like to have an interaction with you. We'd really like to see, if you can come and just show yourselves. We're not talking about any type of physical beings coming down, because I doubt that would happen. What we're talking about is a craft appearing, or lights, and lights that are not your normal aircraft lights, that do things that are out of the ordinary. And this thing was a ginormous craft, though.
How far was it? First of all, what would you classify it as? Since you called it down as a paranormal experience or a UFO experience? And second, what distance was it at? What size do you think it was?
Okay.
Colors, etc.
So I'm gonna say, I'm sitting here right now outside of this place, and it's about 6 stories up, so roughly 10 feet per story. So you're looking at 60 feet. This craft was no more than 75 to 100 and 75 to 100 feet above us. It was massive. It was very, very large, and didn't make a sound. It just literally, like, if you're sitting there without even looking, and all of a sudden a light comes on, big light, which was probably, if I had a guess on the diameter of that light, Could have been, 30, 40 feet in
Okay.
diameter.
Large.
A
Yeah.
pure white, like a LED white. And we're not talking a drone. This was bigger than a drone. And we have some pretty big drones out there. This literally did things. We're talking about flying, right, immediate turn,
Okay.
angles, that
Okay.
we don't conventionally have.
This
So,
isn't
yeah,
conventional craft. And
right,
eh, when it moved away from you, we're talking it
right.
moved a significant distance, or it stayed
It it
within.
moved. It went over to where the mountains were from us, which
Yeah.
was about, we're talking, um, at least 50 miles away
Oh,
from
it
us.
traveled the distance then. Very far.
Yes, within an instant.
Wow.
You watched it within an instant. It was doing these things, and it was mind-boggling.
It's amazing.
Um, yeah, it was mind-boggling that it did it. Um, Look, I was in awe myself because I've seen crafts. But we're literally physically having an interaction with
Yeah.
this craft. Um, and the whole thought is, if you follow this methodology and how these things work, they hear your thoughts. They're using more of their brains, whatever their brains may be. And this is the research that's coming out. So they can connect to you. I mean, the many people that have been abducted or having a sighting, just a
Hmm.
sighting, will hear, look up. And you look up and there's something there. So that's the point of actively engaging with these beings. Now, if they're up there and they hear everything, and I'm not saying God-like, but God hears everything, the
Uh-huh.
Lord, whoever you believe in. But if they can hear you, then they can sure as heck, you can interact with them. If everybody's saying hi, and it's coming from that central location. So we've done this a couple of times. We've done this at a different group, a smaller group, and I do something, and I don't normally talk about it, but I do something called remote viewing. I call it remote viewing,
Yeah.
where you're using
I
your
know what that is.
conscious mind,
Yeah.
yeah, to be elsewhere. And I used remote viewing at one point, and I know this sounds crazy. And my buddy Al wasn't at this meeting. We had a local meeting we used to go to,
Mm.
and so we're there. And I said, well, they're listening to the Stephen Greer protocol because they're part of that. We believe
Yeah.
in Greer. And I'm like, I can't stand Greer. So I put my headphones on and I listen to binaural beats to get Greer out of my head. And I go and I just kind of close my eyes and mentally I'm trying to connect with craft. And I literally was placed, which is very odd, into the craft itself. I looked around. I'm like, okay, I'm in a craft right now. I looked to my right, and sitting at a higher level than me was something that looked like Thor, a Nordic. I looked around. I'm like, okay, there are grays here. I'm like, this is crazy. I got up, and you can see out this. I'm going to call it a window,
Uh-huh.
but you can see from space, like the Earth, like you see in the satellites.
Uh-huh.
And I look in there, and I could catch my reflection in the of the whatever the glass is.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing, looking back at me, is a gray, like alien type of thing.
Uh,
And I'm like, no way. And I'm kind of getting excited at what I'm seeing. And I look, so I started opening my mouth and smiling. You could see the mouth open. I'm like, no way. And looked over. I said, they want people down there want to see you guys come down. And I watched these other craft. They just slowly descended, and it went over to the certain area in New York
uh-huh.
and wherever. I told them where they were, and I was then back where I was, and I told them exactly where it was going to appear. I said, they're going to come over there. And sure as anything, it
That was
appeared.
it.
And thankfully there was about 6 to 7 other people that saw it at the same time. And wherever I said it was going to appear, it appeared again. Now, something I do, because I can do this, I always second guess what I do, because one, I have a quantitative mind, I have an artistic mind, and being that I use two sides of the brain more so than anybody else, I do have an active imagination, meaning,
Uh-huh.
creative. And I always second guess what I'm seeing in my mind's eye. Like, am I making this up? But when
Uh-huh.
you get validated from it, it's like, okay, maybe I'm not making this up. But there's been many times when I've had some kind of these things, and I tell my buddy Al, I'm like, look, this is what I saw. Boom, boom, boom. Should I tell them? I don't want them to think I'm crazy. And I was like, yeah, go ahead. It's like, oh, it's not you that's going to get crazy, it's me. But um, going back to what I do, I have about a 98% accuracy rate.
Okay.
Um, and when I interview other people that have gifts, psychic wise, I always vet everybody because I question it. I was trained in a lot of
Well,
sciences, and
sure.
I'm like,
I mean, you have to
yeah,
because essentially there's a lot of charlatans in
yeah,
every fringe um, interest out there. Of course, because
yep,
essentially the lack of proof is open for mercenary people to come in and make some
right.
money. Um,
And what something that I do with that is
uh,
like, I'm very polite to people. I'm not one of those that wants to rip you apart. There are too many people like that in this
same.
world.
Yeah, yeah, same.
Right. I just thank you very much and I walk away.
Yeah,
But you get one or two that come up to you and they tell you something there is no way in hell they should know. And
yeah.
they add to it. And I'm like, okay. And they prove themselves. One of which is a psychic that works for our group that's not even here. It's in a different state, like Arkansas. And she was the one that alerted to what I do. And
Uh,
I was talking to her. I said, look, I like to explore this without opening up Pandora's box. And she said, sure. But what they don't tell you is, one, everybody has this ability and a gift. You do too. A lot of people in the medical field have it. Two, when you start working with it, it's a Pandora's box.
uh,
So the more you use this, call it intuition, call it third eye, call it whatever, something that's practice, it's the equivalent of a religious experience where you're connecting, you're raising yourself and your vibrations to a higher level and plane. Everybody does this. Yogis do this. The grand
uh,
masters around the world do it. So this is something that is a gift that everybody has, but people, the naysayers, are, oh, you can't do that. Well, you're never going to be able to do that. But we all had that gut feeling, or that, something told me not to go into the room. That's your gifts coming out in
sure,
little
no,
little
sure,
ways.
absolutely.
So
Everybody
I do what I do.
experiences that to some
Right,
degree or another. Yeah.
right, and actually, I do use this a lot on investigations. I'm not sitting there like a swami, whatever, but I try to get. I first of all, I protect myself when I go into places by putting a white golden light around me, and I ground myself, saying I have a protection of God around me. Nothing can come to me, nothing can attach to me, and sure as hell come home with me because you have to protect yourself in this world. Besides, we burn sage and the other stuff, but um, I do use this when I go Bigfoot. If I go out to
Mm.
the woods for Sasquatch or Bigfoot, or uh, the Dogman, which I never in my life wanted to believe existed, but the fucking thing exists. Um, and you start using these things and doing it, and it comes into play. You'll
Uh,
get a feeling, and you must have been out there where you kind of like, this is a little odd or strange, and
couple
it's
of
not just
times.
like
Yeah, a couple of times. I mean, I'm the kind of individual really that when I'm in that position,
right,
I have to tell myself, Andy, you're out here looking for that very thing, so you could really easily be convincing yourself that you're
right.
experiencing something in the woods, of course, make lots of noises all the time that you're
Oh
unfamiliar with,
yes,
or the acoustics of the woods produce sounds from particularly and very normal animals that sound odd in the
yep,
place that you hear them. So, and it's hard to place where sounds come from. So I usually just tell myself, look, if you're feeling a bit jumpy, it's because you're out here expecting to
yep,
find something. So that's a good thing that you're feeling
right.
because it
And
proves that
something
you,
is interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, I
you're
didn't mean to
expecting
cut you off, but
something. Yeah,
yeah, I've yet to be in the woods of the UK. Um,
yeah.
I've gone out there, um, but well before I was really investigating into this stuff, and I want to go back. One of the things I desperately wanted to go back for the September months because I wanted to go to um, the UFO conference that Outer Limits magazine puts on with Chris. He's fantastic, and all the people that go to that.
Oh, a
Um,
pro?
no, it's
Oh no,
Chris
sorry.
Evers.
Yes,
Chris
no, no.
Evers. I wanted to go to
Yeah,
that.
I know it's the
Ron, yeah,
awakening. Awakening?
no. Ron was talking about that as well and something
Oh,
else
okay,
to
okay.
go to, but there was some people have issues with other people and vice
Oh,
versa, and it's yeah.
oh,
And I'm not going to go into who is who and what is what. But you know what?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better to avoid the conflict than
Oh, it
in
really
whatever.
is. I mean, look, as far as cryptid conferences go here in the UK, we've never
Yeah.
managed to really put a cryptid conference on because of
Right.
low interest. But I'm always glad that one has never really happened because I can't imagine the amount of people that would just come to rag me out. Um,
Well, you know what? I'll
and
tell you what. If they do that, I'll get over there on the plane and I'll
yeah,
I'll have your back, and Ron will
thank
have your
you,
back on the same thing.
thank you.
But
It's just
you know the
funny.
thing.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
funny. Go on, go ahead. Sorry.
No, no, no. I was going to say that I'd like to get out into the woods there. I want to go
You
see.
should. I'll
I want to
take you.
go.
Yeah,
I want to go to with you. I want to go see Paul Sinclair. I want to go
yeah,
see Chris Turner. I want to go to certain spots. You
yeah.
know, and that's without getting to Scotland.
Yeah, well,
Where it's like
without,
a
I mean,
doozy of
Paul
some
will
stuff.
take you to some really, to his
Oh
very
yeah.
strange area in Bempton where everybody seems to have lots of experiences.
Oh yeah.
Me, I do love getting out in the woods, but my favorite place to be is on the water, um, where the lake monsters
Well,
are supposed to be. And not just Loch Ness. I don't like Loch Ness so much, but the other lochs and other lakes are
oh
very interesting.
well. I think we talked about it. I don't know if I talked about it with you, but I know I talked about it with Ron that I've
Yeah.
always had this doing through all the sciences. And again, I was trained in certain sciences. I was originally looking to be a astrophysicist
Uh,
because I loved astronomy and science and rocket. And then I'm like, oh, I can't make money doing this, So I went to architecture and engineering. I'm like, okay, this market's done too. And I went into
like,
finally into business end of it, but I still had the love for the sciences. And when I
uh,
investigate, I try to put some science in there. Whereas like we have to be able to replicate some things a couple of different
yeah.
times for it to say, okay, there's something a little bit more here. Okay, besides the, ooh, I got a spooky feeling.
Yeah.
Um, but I can tell you that I do believe that you have bear in the UK, I believe, but they're not as like aggressive or of
We don't have
an
bear.
animal. I thought you had a little bear in some of the um
There was
um
somebody thought that they saw one
okay.
in Rendlesham Forest, which has many stories of all kinds of things, just similarly to Cannock
Well,
Chase.
that
I
was
don't
probably a
think so.
Bigfoot.
We have some big cats, that's for sure. We have some big
Well,
cats.
that's the strange part
Yeah,
because you don't just have some big cats. You
yeah.
have some crazy big cats, and it's not really to believe. Like where did they come from?
Oh, that's
And I'm
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
thinking maybe circuses dropping them. Oh, we lost a cat. Let's go to the next town. Don't worry about it. But
Yeah,
there's
but yeah,
certain things
yeah,
to look forward to.
yeah.
But when you go into the woods, and I don't know what the woods sound like there, but in general, when we go to the woods here, it's different. I don't have a firearm.
Yeah.
Not necessarily I would bring one, but we always have machetes and hunting or survival knives with us. But when you're in the forest, it's teeming with life.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, cool. The minute it just stops, it's dead quiet.
Hmm.
That's when you're looking for these large cryptids like
Yeah.
Sasquatch, Bigfoot, where I really don't want to come up against a dog man again.
Yeah.
It's this horrible looking thing. But when you're in that situation, when all the animals say, now it's time to be very quiet, because something is here, and it's not a
Predator alert.
bear, and
Predator
it's
alert.
a
Yeah. They're telling you.
apex predator.
Yeah.
You get a feeling, and unfortunately, I mean, I know your experiences with the woods and whatever. I remember because I saw your movie. The
Oh
clips with
yeah.
the
Oh, then that little thing, Scotland.
sticks and
Yeah.
stones,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and this is why I'm desperately want you to come. I wish this whole thing was over. So you get over here.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
going to show you sticks and stones,
Yeah.
but I'm going to back it up with you're going to hear tree knocks. You're going to hear rock knocks. We'll get you footprints, and if you're really lucky, we'll get you to see what you've
And
been
this is what I'm saying.
searching for.
Exactly. This is what I'm saying to a lot of the UK researchers is that we don't even have that. Now,
Right.
yes, there's lots of reports, and when the witness gives you a report, you take it at face value. Always,
Yep.
that's the respect you have to give to every witness. You weren't there, you can't validate it unless there's some huge red flags along the way. You've no reason to refuse it. But I've actually come to the conclusion that if we do have anything like that here, it doesn't behave in the way that the American Sasquatch behaves. And the sticks and stones thing is just something we've inherited from our interest in American Sasquatch and Bigfoot. And because
Yep.
we have lots of bushcrafters, we see this bushcraft and we look at the woods, which are very sort of old and sort of windblown, and say, "Oh, look, here they are again." It's just something that we've co-opted from the Americans. If we do have something like a Sasquatch or a British version of that, it behaves very differently, and it's used to a different environment and less forest cover overall than its cousins are used to. So that to me is the big tell.
Right.
We've essentially inherited something that we've invested in and said, okay, now I go into the woods. What do I always find in the woods? Sticks. Ah, Sasquatch.
Oh, there you go.
Well,
Yeah.
it's one thing the woods has a lot of is sticks in funny positions. So,
Yeah.
and we're not talking about these giant pinwheels that you get in the US with branches like 30 feet long sticking out in every direction.
Right.
With something that's
Or like,
about 8 to 10 feet high, perhaps sometimes max.
well,
Um,
you get those fresh breaks sometimes that are about 8 to 10 feet
Occasionally, but
high.
it's very windy here, and a lot of the trees are very slim. So if you, and I'm very good
Right.
at placing where the breaks, where the wind. So there was a little trip to Loch Ness I did, and there's something called the Great Glen Highway in the mountains that goes right around the loch, 70 miles all the way from shore to shore.
Right.
And I was on a little bit of it, and I knew that the day before, because I'd arrived at night, had been incredibly windy. I knew that. Had I arrived that morning when it was incredibly calm, I wouldn't have been aware of that. So as I'm walking up, there's all these tree breaks. There's trees pushed across the path. There's nobody there because it's January walking up this big path. I'm all alone. I
Right.
filmed a little bit of it, and the point I made during that was, oh look, something's blocking the path here. It's a Bigfoot. If a tree falls in the woods and there's nobody there to hear it or to see it, did Bigfoot push it? And
That's a
that's
good
the point.
question.
Yeah. Or do trees just fall in the woods? And they do. And it's a windy old place, Scotland. And
Right.
without knowing that, with that mindset, you go, oh, look at this activity. But
Well,
no,
yeah. And it's
yeah,
severe winds over in Scotland. You're
really severe.
talking like
Yeah,
40, 50 mile. I mean, I'd
more.
love to play St. Andrews
Yeah,
and even
yeah,
higher. And
yeah,
that's like a little mini tropical depression or whatever,
yeah,
or tropical storm. The funny thing is in the States, I grew up feeling that I have to, if I want to see a Bigfoot,
yeah,
I got to go to the Pacific Northwest,
yeah.
right? That's where the Patty footage is, which I believe is 100% real, and I
Yes,
believe 100% Bob Giblin,
yeah,
um, and that's where it is. Boy, little did I know, because I was in sleepaway
yeah.
camp in Connecticut, at about 3 in the morning when there was one staring in my window, looking into my bunk,
Wow.
and the only thing separating that head, which looked like a monkey, wasn't. It was very dark, but you can make out the features, and it was tilting and moving. The only thing that separated that from me was a plane of glass that was millimeters, like so minute, right? So here we go, which scared the heck out of me at the time. And when I finally researched it, I discovered that the reservoir that's right butts up against the property, there were two sightings that year of a Sasquatch in
Uh-huh.
that area. So 1 + 1 is 2. I couldn't technically say, hey, it really happened, you know, right off the bat, as we have people coming by. Sorry about that. Hi, everybody. I'm at a hotel, so. But you know what? It was my first encounter, and it didn't register as a young kid
Yeah.
because of the fact that they're not here. But you know what? There's a lot of them here in Connecticut, in New York, in Pennsylvania. They take the Appalachian Trail. It's like a highway for them, and there's a lot more here than there were
Well,
anyplace else.
I've seen that. I've seen some of those areas as well. I've been to New York State,
Right.
Vermont, New Hampshire. These are woody
Yep.
places. These are very, very heavily woody places. I landed, and I always talk about this, as I was landing in
Right.
Atlanta. I know everybody has to change a lot to Atlanta. They have to sort of
Right.
transfer to Atlanta. I landed there, and just the landing, the endless forest as you're
Oh
landing
yeah.
in Atlanta. I thought, this is Atlanta. This
Yeah.
is I mean, this is it seemed to me at that time, if from my small experiences, one of the most heavily wooded places I've ever seen coming in. I could not see, and it was a flat landscape. I could not see an end to the woodland. And I just thought, well, who's in there? Who's in that woodland in Atlanta saying, any Bigfoot here?
Right.
Any cougars here? Let's just take a head count, shall we? Before we go on.
Yeah.
I know our respective colleague, Russell Accord, I heard him talking about the Pacific Northwest and flying uh,
Yep.
over there at some point and talking about planes going down that they've never found in the forest.
Yes.
They've
Yes.
never found planes that. How is that possible? Unless we just don't understand the pure gravitas of the wild
Uh,
area there.
when you come here,
Yeah,
and I hope the day is coming sooner
I
than
hope so
later
too.
because I hope this is
Yeah.
all over, the COVID stuff. Let me tell you something. When I drove and I did a couple things in Pennsylvania where Ron Murphy is out
Mm,
of, and Eric Altman and stuff, if you want to talk about woods,
mm,
if you want to talk about density of forest, that's Pennsylvania,
yeah.
that entire massive state. And they have a ton of Bigfoot sightings. They have a ton. They have this area called the Lichen Loop, which is,
Uh,
werewolves, dogman, if you'd like to call it. And you can easily see why these creatures can exist and never be found.
yeah.
Never. It's that's how vast it is. Now, you also have to understand that if you get into the Ohio area, the Ohio grassman, which is their version of a Sasquatch Bigfoot, very, very, very aggressive,
Uh,
extremely aggressive animal. Um, and I'm not. I don't believe it's part of the human species, and I don't believe it's part of the ape species. I believe it is its own species, and I'm not going to get into the anthropology of that at
okay.
this point. This is my feeling about this, and this is we have yet to unlock this, and don't get into the gigantic epithecus or whatever it is. I don't believe it's part of that either. I can't prove it because I don't have one just yet, but I think once we get into more quantitative sciences, everything that you hear about this creature will be validated.
Uh,
That being said, that's aggressive up there. If you go to Nepal, the Yeti, very aggressive.
uh,
Abominable snowman, extremely aggressive. And it seems that in the areas that have less population and less interactions,
uh,
these become more wild versus the New York area, some of the PA area. A lot of people hiking, a lot of people
uh,
outdoors. A little bit more respect for that creature than elsewhere, and I think that's what's taking place. So your Bigfoot Sasquatch could very well be very, very docile. More, like I want to stay away from these things and keeps to
yeah.
themselves. And if you have cave systems and underground
We do
waterways,
have a lot.
they don't
Yeah,
have to come up to you.
yeah.
This is the problem. When
Not
I
just
was
cave
mentioning when you,
systems. There's so many like old abandoned mines. I mean,
yeah,
we've been tin mining here since before the Romans came.
yeah.
There's
So
abandoned
so
mines everywhere. You find
right,
them all the
they
time. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And if you have rodents and you have fish and you have
We've got
fowl
about
and
38
especially
million
deer,
rabbits. We've got 30 million sheep wild
there's
grazing. Yeah,
yep, there's
deer at
plenty.
rest. Yeah,
Right. There's plenty of food for these
yeah.
creatures
Oh
that
yeah,
are on the
sure.
Bigfoot Sasquatch side. Now, when we get talking about Paul Sinclair,
Uh,
when you get into some of the mutilations type of creatures,
yeah,
then you get into that American Werewolf in London stuff.
yeah,
Where you're talking about werewolves, and they are very aggressive. They are, I'm going to eat what I'm going to eat and leave the rest behind.
yeah.
They're not. I don't think they're clan oriented. I think they're more individual based. And let me tell you something. I never wanted to believe this creature exists at all. I thought it was like, okay,
So
what?
you
Come
had
on,
a
we're
sighting.
pushing
That's
the
right.
envelope.
You had a
Yeah,
sighting.
we did.
That was in New York State.
Yes, it was, and it was right outside of a cemetery, so it fits all
Wow,
the.
perfect.
We were doing this. Yeah, we were doing this an investigation of this place, Letchworth Village
Uh,
Cemetery. Letchworth Village. To give you a little backstory, is a 28,000-acre institution where deformed children, mental retardation, adults, or the
okay.
non-wanted of society was pushed away and kept in secret.
Kind of
They did.
19th
They
century
did.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
20th century too. It only
Oh, really?
closed not that long
Uh,
ago, but um, I believe the polio vaccine was tested there. or in some. And the way they tested it was on children,
Yeah.
different ages, and if you lived, it was a candidate. And there's a lot. This cemetery had hundreds of unmarked graves in it, from age literally 2 weeks to 78 years old, whatever.
Yeah.
So we were doing an investigation there. The locals came in. You had to walk in about a quarter of a mile to get into the cemetery. Unmarked graves, one big headstone, and we're doing it there. And I remember the locals coming in when they saw us going in there, and they flew in on a 4-wheel, like they were bad out of help. And they're going through, and they're looking, and they're like, well, we can't find them. And I said to my buddy Al, I'm like, maybe we should stop and just say, let them know that we're here.
Yeah.
And we went up to them, and they're like, what are you doing here? It's like, oh, we're paranormal investigators. We're investigating. And they're like, they're investigators. We're out. And they got out really quick. It was like they wanted to get in and out purposely. We didn't count any of that stuff because we weren't paying attention. We thought, whatever.
You thought that they just saw you were trespassing and they came to check you out.
No, this was more. This definitely had the feeling of they wanted to get in and out of that area because they didn't want to be in that area. So more of, I know more than you do, and I know what's around here, and I don't want to see it. That type of thing. So that being said, they went out, and we went there. We were there for a couple hours, and eventually we left, and then we pulled back up after getting something to eat. We pulled up a little bit further away from where the cemetery entrance was, underneath this light, where it seemed to be a pathway for like a natural, like, hiking area. And we trekked in. We were there for a little bit longer. My buddy started acting a bit weird. He heard some things. We heard dogs barking, big dogs, like growls, and I was more focused on the paranormal side, like ghosts or whatever, not Bigfoot or any type of cryptids. And he started acting a little weird. I'm like, what's wrong with you? And he's like, nothing, I'm fine. I'm like, you know what, something's up, not right with you. But after a while, it got cold. Fog rolled in. It was really weird. Your classic movie scene of like the guy with the chainsaw should be coming out of the woods any minute. And so he said, you know what, we'll pack up and we'll go. And because it was so cold, I had to relieve myself, and I was not going to do it out of respect to the graves on there. So we walked back to his truck, and as we're walking back, it's near this light. We're not under directly, but it's about 50 yards away from us, and you can see a little bit better. I'm catching eye shine by near the truck, and I'm thinking, oh, deer, because deer everywhere. And as we get closer and closer, the passenger side's on that side of the woods, and Al's throwing his stuff in the back, and we see this thing sitting there, and it's sitting down like a dog, and you see the ears, the pointy ears, like a shepherd almost, like a Marmaduke, but you're not seeing much of the detail, but you can see some of the eye shine. And it's about 25 yards away from us. And I'm on a 3-foot grade, easy 3-foot grade. So I'm 6'1". So that's 9 feet 1, right? And this thing is just sitting there, not moving, not budging 1 inch, just staring at it. So while I was doing that, I opened the door to the car, dropped some of the stuff, and I said, the heck with it. I'm going to relieve myself. So I'm urinating in front of this thing. Now, if you know anything about canines or dogs, if you wanted to establish alpha dominance, that's what you do. Some of them even urinate on the other dogs, saying, listen, I'm the boss.
Seen it,
So Al's like, get in the car, Brian, get in the car. I'm like, yeah, I'm not finished yet. I'm getting. And it was there for a while, and he's looking, and he's watching it while he's getting the stuff in. And I wasn't unnerved until...
How far away is it from you while you're urinating?
20 I'm going to say probably 20 yards. 20 to 25 yards.
In detail, the size, texture.
I can see it's definitely not a deer, it's a dog. It has the dog pointed ears. It has a snout, but I see the little bit of the nose.
Back almost.
And
like a dog would
it's just sitting. Yeah, like a dog sitting up on its hind legs in front. And it's just
what
not
height
moving.
would you give that? That's an estimate. 20 feet away is difficult, but...
Well, I'll tell you exactly.
Yeah.
So like I said, I'm on a 3-foot grade. I'm 6'1". So at this point, I'm 9 feet tall. Its eyes literally were level with me.
Wow.
So sitting down, this was a massive animal. Okay. Now, I heard dogs in the background, so I'm thinking
Yeah.
dog. But it's kind of weird. It's not budging. It's not
Yeah.
moving. It's just staring at me. Again, I'm urinating in front of it. Like, and I'm thinking, like, this guy's crazy. You know, I can just picture the crypto going, wow, this guy's really, really out of his mind. He's really, you know, that's a big statement in that
Yeah.
kind of
No,
world.
I understand. Yeah. Yeah.
And Al's, you know, screaming at me, and I'm like, I'm peeing, and, you know, like, I gotta pee, you know. So, and then after a while, very nonchalantly, I looked away, and it started going down, and it went down from the sitting position. It lowered its body, and then it disappeared. There's not
Uh-huh.
a sound, mind you. And at that point, the goose flesh comes up, and I'm like, this is not good.
Yeah.
And I think my personal opinion, and I discussed it with Al afterwards. He's like, I'm getting the car. I'm going to leave you. Get in the car. And I said, that's a good idea. And I got in the car. Now, I mind you, I still had my machete here.
Uh-huh.
And then eventually we got in the car and we took off. And I think we got away just in the nick of time. But the only other thing, it very much looked kind of like that soldier, like a German Shepherd wolfish type of thing.
Uh-huh. I
Not as
understand. Yeah.
bushy.
Yeah.
And it was there. And I've had dogs my entire life. We had show dogs. We had Welsh Terriers. My brother had a Rottweiler. It was 125 pounds. And it would sit there. I've only seen Shepherds or like Rottweilers really just will sit and they'll
Yeah.
wait for you to give them a command. But eventually they would move. This thing did not move for a good 10 minutes.
Wow.
And we didn't even shine a light on it. I wasn't even going to shine a light on it because we don't know what the heck we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
But there was a feeling, there's an overwhelming feeling you get at that moment where it disappears. And I thought personally that it was trying to like, okay, let's see how tough
Approach
you are.
you. Yeah. Yeah.
100%. And Al got the same vibe, and we just got out probably
Yeah.
at the right time. Now, mind you, I'm going to talk about sticks and trees now, okay? Where that event took place, where the car was, again, about a quarter mile away from the entrance to this cemetery. We have to walk down a quarter mile. Down the entrance there, what butted up against it on the left-hand side was the power lines, which is usually used for Bigfoots. It's like
Yeah.
a highway for these
Yeah.
creatures. Inside the forest, there was a tree structure. We didn't see anything Bigfoot related, but what we did see was what looked like somebody took a real tree. We're talking probably like a 3-foot circumference, ripped it out of the ground. But here's the catch. Instead of just laying it against something, it flipped it upside down. So the
Yeah.
roots are in the air. And then
Marker.
other trees
Yeah.
were, now we've seen these things before. We've seen these type of markings. I've seen Bigfoot markings, and I've seen these are dogman markings. These are really brash and bold. That's the difference between these two.
Okay.
From my personal research and
Yeah.
experience, Bigfoot knows what he can do. Dogman is like, not only can do it, we're going to show you we're doing it.
Yeah.
They don't care. They're brash. So there were signs there that said Dogman.
Do you
I
think
didn't
there's
see it until
a
that
difference
night.
in intelligence level between the two creatures? Because restraint almost indicates, in a way, a more intelligent animal. Or do you think this is something to do with living in family groups and living as a solitary territorial animal?
Well, I think Bigfoot does do things in packs, but clans for
Yeah.
their family. They seem to be very clan oriented. They're
Uh-huh.
very protective of that part. The only time I've ever heard of these creatures being very well, there's, again, like certain areas where there's less people, but
Yeah.
when you get too close to the young, it's like any mother or father,
Yeah.
they're going to do it. Also, when they get to that rut stage where they're like, like a grown
Okay.
teenager, I
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
get something, that's the only time I've ever seen them and heard of them being very aggressive.
Okay.
Okay. The other
So
way
they might go
around.
through a sort of a musk type period, like a bull
Yes.
elephant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then they, get what they need,
Yeah.
like we all do. And then we're like, oh, cigarette, move on. And
Bigfoot
so,
cigarette.
yeah,
Smoking a
that was great.
branch.
That was
That's
great.
what those branches are.
Yeah, they are the cigarettes. But what I definitely see Bigfoot is curious. They will peek into windows.
Yeah.
They definitely are curious about little kids. I've
Yeah.
heard plenty of stories of them playing with children, and doing the swapping, like
There's a lot of
little girl
Yowie
needs a
stories
doll.
about them playing with
Yeah,
kids in the outback
yeah,
Italy.
yep. But the difference is, um, from the lichen point of view. We'll talk lichen instead of dogman. Um, they not only peek in your window, they rap on your door. They
Okay.
try to they play around with your door. They try to get you outside,
Ah.
and they're usually in packs. They usually work in twos. If you see one in front of you, or to the left or right of you, I
Okay.
guarantee you there's another one creeping up behind you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, they're extremely intelligent. They 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 will mess with your head. They'll be at the front door and the back door, and they'll ringing the
Okay.
doorbell to get you to come out. Now, I never understood this because we have one investigator in upstate New York that had that experience. They have a store in the back end of their home. It's to
Uh-huh.
do fishing, and that has a separate bell ringing, and they have one in the front door, which is in the front end of the house.
Mm.
And one night, about 3 in the morning, they heard ding, 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 ding,
Uh-huh.
and she's like, "What?" She sleeps with a shotgun, mind you. Well, here's another thing. The, the she had a print on her front end of her house as like a little sunroom. So you have the second floor up there, and then it's like a
Uh-huh.
little roof, and then that's where she sleeps at night. And there's a front door in the front. It's an enclosed sunroom that they
Okay.
used to
Yeah.
open
Yeah.
up. So she had a handprint upside down like this on the
Uh,
door, and they're figuring out like what's going. How the hell did they get there? And when we went out there with Al, my buddy, I said, well, it's very simple. He was on your roof. He literally, this creature was on the roof and leaned over in underneath to go peek in her window. They're very aggressive. It's not a joke. Then you hear stories of people out in like Washington State, women, like that live in, not off the grid, but they live in the
uh-huh.
woods, and they're walking their dog down a path, and they talk about getting rocks thrown at them,
Mm.
and they see a Bigfoot down there, and the rocks are thrown, and they kind of back away. There are other people that see the Bigfoot there and they skirt it and they keep going with their dog, and then they have a dogman encounter. And I've
Uh-huh.
seen and heard many stories of Bigfoot being actively telling human beings like, "Stay away. There's a dogman there."
Uh-huh.
They know it's there, and they're protective of the species,
Do you know
which
any
is weird.
stories of them being in confrontation or being witnessed in confrontation with one another? That's something I've never heard of. I've seen it
So,
proposed several times, but I've never
well,
heard of any witness citing that details that.
I do know of a story, and I heard it through my buddy, my friend Al, who is the founder of the Paranormal Society.
Yeah.
So I forgot, it was way back when, and I don't know where in the U.S. it was, but it was in one of the states where there was Native American tribe, and they were there. And on one side of the river were Sasquatch, and
Uh-huh.
they knew about the Sasquatch. And on the other side of the river were these dogmen type of creatures, lichens. And the dogmen kept on messing with and trying to, kill or take
Yeah.
their kills, take their food, even take the people of this. And they got really, really just they tired of all
Yeah.
this stuff, and they knew that dogmen every once in a while would mess with Sasquatch. They'll they'll mess with the young, and then the
Uh-huh.
dogman. I mean, dogman will mess with a young Sasquatch, Bigfoot, and Bigfoot would then come up, and there'd be a little bit of a conflict, whatever it
Uh-huh.
is. And it's basically you stay on your side of the road, and I'll stay on my side. Good fences make good neighbors.
Yeah.
Home.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the species
So
tend to give each other space.
right, it's like
Yeah.
you're there, I'm there, and I can
Grizzlies and
validate.
black bears.
Right,
Yeah.
we've been in places where if you go one path, you'll get Bigfoot sightings.
Yeah.
If you go another path, you're going to get dogman sightings. And there are markers. And yes, it's not just trees at this time. There are markers that tell each one who's there. And but the dogmen are more aggressive about going in there and pushing the envelope to the Bigfoot. But getting back to the native tribe, I forgot what tribe it was, and I'll try to get it for you.
Uh-huh.
So they got tired of this crap. because it's a threat to their life. So what they did was very smart thinking. They went and they did something, and I don't know if they kidnapped or killed another, like a baby Sasquatch or
Uh-huh.
something. Not sure what the event was, but they did it. They put it onto the dogman side
Uh-huh.
to make the illusion that the dogman did it. That made an all-out war, and that's when the Bigfoot came in, and there was a huge fight,
Uh-huh.
big fight, and the Sasquatch came in. They started cleaning house, killing, and it kind of helped them like okay, cool, we can live peacefully. It's like if you think about how genius that is to be that bold and brash,
Well,
to
yeah.
set up one
Well, I
for
suppose
the other.
it's a needs must situation. Um,
Well, yeah, I
all
mean
the
this
sightings
is the
that
stories I've heard.
well, listen, all the sightings we have here, of Bigfoot-like creatures, those are that are reported, as you say, tend to be a bit more docile or
Yep.
curious from time to time, only very occasionally aggressive. All of the let's call them dogman sightings that we have here, which are very few in number, tend to always be aggressive or
Yep.
at least kind of creepy. And they are definitely very few in number, even of all those that are validated. Let's cut that in half and say even a third of that half are probably quite valid sightings. Yeah,
Right.
incredibly aggressive, and just seems to be an animal that does not like a human presence around it in any way whatsoever. And that to
I think
me
there were. Yeah.
denotes a
I was
sort
just
of
gonna.
a singular territoriality, perhaps. A
Right.
roaming like behavior, one creature roaming around and occasionally living in a family group.
If you know you're the king of the land
Yeah,
and you can kill anything there,
yeah,
they have nothing. But that's the mentality I feel that
yeah,
these things have. Um, you know, it, it's very unusual. I always think of when I think of UK type of sightings when I've heard those of
yeah,
Sasquatch. It has been very docile. It's almost like an oops moment,
yeah,
like someone's hiking with their dog, and then Bigfoot's coming back with fish, and then they kind of like they're not paying attention. They bump into each other. Like, oh
yeah,
my god, it's and they're I think it would be a perfect Monty Python sketch
yeah,
if they were around. It's like nothing here. Okay, I've got to go now. Bye. Whereas these other ones are what we reported with when you get
yeah,
into that lichen type of philosophy, dogman thing. People that have encounters with these things always say the same thing. They describe the same eyes long before all this radio and internet and all this other stuff.
yeah,
But they also describe they feel like they heard it in their brain mentally, and they had terrible nightmares where this creature invades them,
uh-huh,
which is very interesting for the most part. Um, like, wow, oh my God, and it scares the hell out of them. I've heard stories. Now, I never initially believed of this whole telepathic type of thing,
mm,
what they currently call woo, which is like I personally hate that because not only is it tough enough to believe in these subjects and then research them,
add
but
another
now
yeah
right
aspect to that.
that
Yeah,
you,
definitely.
that
Yeah,
that in the real world you're treated like a freak,
yeah,
but now this makes you an even specialer freak because you believe in the woo. Now I didn't believe in the woo. Um, Again, up in New York State, we had some people that had, talking about how telepathically
uh-huh,
they talk to them, and I thoroughly, I'm very respectful. I'm like with them. Oh, that's very interesting. And when we get back, I believe that they believe what they're believing,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
never believed it. And I said, my example was, they have a six pack, but they don't have a plastic thing to hold it together. You know,
yeah,
of
yeah,
of,
yeah,
of until I had an experience with my buddy Al, and it was very scientific where you had the whoop whoop, and then the
yeah,
next whoop, the third whoop, is 2 miles down the road, pitch black, go trail. No way you can do it unless you're able to open a portal, go someplace, and come out. And quantitatively, it would explain it interdimensionally. And from that point forward, I'm like, okay, this is proof. I've actually experienced the proof.
yeah,
So now I can say okay, there's something to this. I have never mentally connected with any of these things, so I'm waiting for that
No,
moment in my life.
no. Well, I always wonder with that, Brian, if
Yeah,
it's more to do with your reactions to physiological effect that's being meted at you. So people talk about infrasound a lot. We know some
yeah,
animals have that. We know we suspect now that tigers actually stun their prey into immobility using this infrasound. And I
right,
often wonder if same with effects with certain drugs. I had to take morphine once post-operative, sort of mild
mm.
morphine to just sort of deal with the pain. And I
Cut the
had
edge,
yeah, cut the edge, with the
have
nice coffee.
a
And
little morphine.
I had some really mad hallucinations with it, whereas other people I knew who took it just felt a bit drowsy. And I
Right,
just thought that's the effect that that drug hit with me, and another person gets its other effect. And maybe when you get hit with this infrasound and it jiggles your body up, you some people imagine that they hear something talking to them and their mind goes into action, and other people feel
right,
afraid like they're supposed to, and other people feel sick. Oh yeah, I felt very nauseous all of a sudden. What was that all about? And maybe they're having the same experience. It's just their body and their
right,
psyche reacts differently to those circumstances, those physiological attacks for which they've no explanation
right.
at that time. So I think that's, to me, I always try to think about that. Do we? I once met a guy at Probe, funnily enough,
Ooh,
who's a nice guy. This is one of the oldest UFO conferences in the UK. It's the first place I ever spoke about cryptids, actually,
oh,
in
nice.
2017. Yeah, and I think my opening line to them was that my wife had told me when I got the gig that for once I'd be the only normal guy in the room, and and they liked it actually. I thought it was going to really bomb, but they
It's
went with it. And
yeah, it's
yeah, it's a funny concept because I'm talking about stuff
yep,
that's weird, and then one step further. And anyway, so I spoke to a guy there, and he talked to me. He'd done a lot of studies on the Fae, on the fairy
right,
people. So he talked to me about going to this forest glade once, and he said, and then suddenly all around me it lit up, and all the fairy kingdoms were there. And I was like, wow, describe it to me. Could you see it? He said, well, no, I couldn't see it, but I could see it in my mind. I was like, yeah, well, okay. Uh, and he
yeah,
was just serious, pan-faced. Yeah, it happens all the time. I'm like, okay, but maybe from my perspective, you can see how you're just telling me you're seeing it in your mind. Now he could have been saying that he was having a sort of a vision of a kind, and it wasn't
right,
corporeal, but the vision was fully in his mind. But it still says, for the objective observer, that's still the imagination. Um, and this is the issue.
yeah,
This is the issue, really. How much of what we experience is subjective? Maybe the fairy folk or some physiological phenomena was taking place in the area in which he was based, but his interest in the Fae people gave him that vision. That was his expression of the feeling he was having.
right.
Do
Something
you see
very
what I'm coming
interesting about
from?
this. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no, I totally do.
Yeah.
Now, I came to the infrasound conclusion about the Sasquatch creature and
Uh,
some of the other ones, um, many years ago. I was introduced to infrasound when I was a wee person, wee lad, because my mother and father's cousin was in the music business,
uh,
and he knew the guy that did the soundtrack for The Exorcist. And what
oh.
made the soundtrack for The Exorcist so fantastic was it was the first
Ah.
movie ever to use infrasound in the
That's
soundtrack.
what it is.
It's
That's
infrasound,
amazing.
and it's at a frequency. I think it's 13.3. I'm not exactly
8C.
sure,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
or 8 point something, one of the two, and it
Low.
just creeps you out. It's like
That's
it's like a
what's
fear
so
kit. It's just
creepy about
really
that
creepy.
movie.
Yep, infrasound, first time ever used in the soundtrack. Your mind doesn't even know about it. But I believe the guy that did the soundtrack was an engineer and he got a big degree in the whole thing, audio
Ah,
and sound waves. So that makes sense, right? So
yes.
here's the thing with infrasound, right? So infrasound at certain levels can kill you.
Oh, really?
Infrasounds at certain level, yes, can create a euphoric experience. Sound in general can be used to levitate. Sound can be used to create patterns in
Hmm.
different resonance.
Yeah, yeah.
So I knew about this, and I said they started talking about um, more so with digital equipment, um, blob squatch. I love
Hmm.
blob squatch photos.
Hmm.
Look, I got a speak of it, you know, and then you
Buster,
talk about that.
just blur it up a little bit more for us, can you? Focus it a bit
Yeah,
more.
yeah,
Blur,
yeah,
blur,
yeah.
blur. Don't forget the
Well,
circle. We need that red
yeah,
circle to see what we're
circle it
looking
over.
at.
Uh, two eyes, nose. And I have one of those actually in our investigation that someone pointed out to me that I've seen these photos a
Yeah.
thousand times. It looks like a monkey. It's not as blobby as anything else. And another one looks like a dog man. I'll send them to you. But so I propose the theory that because these creatures know have an ability to go interdimensionally, let's just say,
Uh-huh.
as well as I'm going to put my little light on and see if it works.
Oh, yeah. I see you.
Probably not.
Yeah.
There you go. Sorry about that. Be, I believe that they use infrasound to warp the field around them.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and in doing so, it creates on a there's different frequencies where the eyes can see and can't see. It's on a can't see frequency, and I had it written down. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I think that's what's creating the blob squatches because they're
Oh.
aware of it. It's a protective device. There are some of them look like where this creature looks
Yeah.
as if it's the predator,
Yeah.
and it's like a camouflage. And we
Yeah.
know that that could be done too because the military has been doing stuff like that as well. But something very interesting to prove my point is when they know humans and they're aware of what a camera is, they know what a
Mm.
gun is, they know what knives are. They'll defend themselves by blobbing it out to get out of the area there, and they could use it to make you feel queasy, like to
Mm.
get you out
Mm.
other ways too, because you're not aware of that. You're not going. You're getting hit by this
You just
audio
suddenly
sound.
feel unusual.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like oh, I
Yeah.
don't feel good
I
all of a
kind of
sudden. I
feel
feel
sick all of a
nauseous.
sudden. Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
But there was again. I point to this. I think it was in the Pacific Northwest. They had an eagle camera, and it was in a nest really high up in the
I've seen
forest.
that.
The
Yeah.
forest, right?
Yeah.
And then in that video, what happens is you see you can see pretty clearly.
Mm.
It's a clear image. It's too far away though. It's like what looks like a monkey playing in the woods. And I'm my theory, my hypothesis is that Bigfoot was not aware there was a camera up there
Uh-huh.
and didn't had no need to put on its protective shell,
Uh-huh.
and that's why it was clear. Now, had you went, I guarantee you, it would have been a great experiment to be able to,
Yeah.
if we can do this somehow. If all of a sudden the camera goes funky, then my point or my theory or hypothesis is not validated fully, but I'm in the right zone,
Uh-huh.
and I think that can be done because, again, I was there's a series I told you about it, Into the Unknown. Cliff
Yes.
Simon
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
the host, is the host, and he went to the Sahara Sandman, which is Bigfoot of the Sahara Desert. He found the oasis. He put up the fruit there. He put up the game camera. They heard the noise. They ran in, one in running,
Yeah.
and the food was taken. It was pretty high up, and he checked the game camera. And here's where they made a mistake. And I got to talk to Cliff. I'm gonna talk to him about this
Yeah.
because he had evidence and he didn't realize it. They get to the footage, and all of a sudden, there's an anomaly. The footage gets all
Like a glitch.
wiry.
Yeah.
Yeah, a glitch. Oh, the camera glitched. Let me tell you something, people. Those cameras are built like a brick shithouse. They are designed to get hit by a lot of things.
Yeah.
Wasn't a glitch. What I'm saying to you is, it knew because it smelled something out of the ordinary in
Yeah.
its area, which is another human being and whatever else is going on there, possibly a smoker or whatever it is. It went in. It knew that camera was there because using something over the tapia, it can
Mhm.
see UV and different light spectrums because
Uh-huh.
it's a great nocturnal animal. So it's like, I'm not
That
going
would
to
make
mess with that,
sense.
but
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it emits a frequency, okay, and that affects the camera long enough for it to go, I got what I want. Bye. And that's what I'm proposing.
Well, I
And
think
I'm
that's
probably one of the few people that propose
I think
that
that's
theory.
reasonable. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. There has to be some explanation at this point. A lot of
Yep.
people reported, and of course, people always look at them and say, "Yeah, okay, whatever," Something happened to your camera. Yeah, sure. But a lot of people
Yeah.
reported, I had it in my sights, but this is the only picture I got from it. I had it dead on, and I clicked and I clicked and I clicked, and yet all I've got is these blobby pictures. There's been talked about, hasn't it, for a long time?
Right.
And that the creature that was afterwards named Paddy, for example, one
Hmm.
wasn't aware that these people were going to be coming up, Bob Gibling and Patterson, because of the smell of the horses. So wasn't really
Hmm.
prepared. Was quite in the open. And two, it's an analog camera. It's a different kind of camera, and perhaps they're not affected the same
Film.
as digital cameras.
Film.
Film.
No digital. No electronics.
There you go.
Think about that.
Yeah.
So
We need to
the
get out
only
there,
thing,
get back out there with some analog equipment.
or
Yeah.
FLIR.
Uh-huh.
FLIR.
Yeah.
That because you're at a different spectrum, it's very hard to get off the FLIR.
Yeah.
Although, speaking of, and I talked to Sage about this, of course, Russ, about this when we first joined.
Oh,
We
from the
were in the,
Expedition Bigfoot flare
yes, Quarter
footage. Yeah.
13. If you've seen
Yeah.
the Expedition,
Yeah.
that show, there's one point where he's using a FLIR and he
Yeah.
gets this large mass there, which looks like, it doesn't look like a human being. It looks like a big, large, like a monkey or
Yeah.
something, that what he's looking for. And he sees it. He sees a deer come into play on the left hand side of it, and then that picture fades away.
Yeah.
Okay, but the deer, not looking at it after it goes invisible, turns its head to it. It's aware that something's there, and then it takes off. Again, if this can use it as camouflage, it can
Uh-huh.
affect the light around it as a camouflage. It could very well protect it from a FLIR camera. But if it's not aware of this, it has no reason. If it's not hunting for food and needs to go into its,
Yeah.
tree stand, set up a tree stand, they can put it around its body. If it's using infrasound or something of that effect, it has the ability to affect electronics or electromagnetic. That's what a wave is.
It's
Wave is a
very, very
waveform,
interesting. Yeah, it's a
right?
very interesting concept. So essentially, what you're saying is we just need a bunch of eagle cams all over the place.
Well, yeah, you
I'm
know what?
kidding, but I'm just saying,
No,
there's
no,
got to be a
drones would be
way.
good.
Drones would be great.
Silent drones
Yeah,
with FLIR cameras, and maybe something. They did put up a nice camera up
yeah.
high when they went to the top of the ridge. Russ, oh, there's the ghost right there.
Table just collapsed. That's fine.
No, no, that's. Trust me, I'm like, this happens a lot actually.
But no,
Um,
I really think that this lockdown has maybe I put on a lot of weight. I was down to that time.
there's no way. There's
Well,
no
look,
way.
I just think you clearly have my attention because I was leaned fully on this little desk. It's back in now. It's all
Well,
safe again.
you know what?
There you
We
go,
need
folks. There's one
cameras.
for you.
Yeah.
That's the power of infrasound.
One of the things that I wanted to create, and I was working with somebody initially, is I want to create a camera that will take a UV picture, a FLIR picture, black and white, color, full spectrum,
Hmm.
and film. And I wanted it in one camera. So when I
Okay.
snap the picture, it's taking 7 different
All of
shots.
those at once. Yeah.
And the
Okay.
reason for this is because, one, some things, like ghost hunting or whatever you want to call it.
Huh.
I hate calling it hunting. It's not like we have them hanging on our
Yeah.
walls.
Uh-huh.
That was Fukushima 72. But if there's a couple of times where we always tell everybody when we're going out, don't just take one picture, take
Yeah.
3 in a row. Boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom. Because you'll see movement and you'll see if it's a
Yeah.
fluke or not, or if it's the same thing. But when you get UV lighting and then you get infrared, and you're getting a different spectrums of it, and you may see something
Mm.
and you're catching it several different times, which
Yeah.
I think it would be genius. It'd be a really expensive camera. But if we could put something like that up, or those higher end remote cameras with longer batteries, maybe use solar power, and you can control them from a distance over a series, like I think they used it on Russ's show, the
Yeah.
Expedition Bigfoot. That
But
would be
this is what
fantastic.
this is what I think, though, Brian, is that when you find this, up at Loch Ness and places like that, there really is no money invested in the genre at all. as far as equipment. And if you think about
Right.
it, let's just say that we're looking for, from the animal point of view, in the hunt
Right.
for new species that
Hmm.
may be
Sorry about that.
formerly
I'm going to move a little
either,
bit. Let
that's
people
okay,
do their thing.
or that's
Yep.
okay,
Go ahead.
formerly unrecognized, or
Right.
species that have been thought to be extinct. And you think to yourself, well, surely that's worth a bit of investment. Surely that's worth some of this great equipment we use for wildlife photography. The equipment we use for going to these uh, out there places and discovering the new
Right.
frogs and new apes and all these different types of things. Why don't we have some investment in this genre? Because there seems to be plenty of selling going on, just no reinvestment.
Right.
And
But what kind of return on that investment are we talking about though? That's
nothing.
the whole thing. Like where
Nothing
could
at
the
all.
yeah, but that's the problem. It's like
Yeah.
there's no money to be made in this. So
No.
why are we going to invest in something where there's no
Yeah.
money to be made in it? And that's why you don't have what you really need is the
Yeah.
money surrounding this subject matter to get it done properly. I'm trying to
And
get
this
into
is where
a
we have
better
this.
lit
No,
area.
that's good light. That's good light. And
Yeah.
this is where we get into this very uncomfortable marriage between TV shows and cryptozoology and paranormal, where essentially you've got to make that weird compromise where they need something a little sensational, but you've got to give them something credible, and for your own reputation, you want to keep it credible, and yet
Right.
the the framing that they eventually choose will always be kind of slightly tongue-in-cheek, slightly mocking, and over-sensationalized. I mean, just referencing, for example, the famous alligators in the sewers of New York, Lauren Coleman from 2009 or 2008,
Yeah.
which he was really panned for. I often wonder to myself, did he really assert in that documentary that there would be a population explosion of alligators in the sewers, or was it just framed really badly? From about 2, 3 hours of conversation,
Well,
hypothetical
it's
conversation.
really. I'm going to throw something at you, and I've, the gift of Lauren Coleman is throughout time he's been able to take a lot of this stuff and
Yeah,
catalog it into books for himself.
yeah,
And you know what?
which are amazing books,
Um,
most of them.
right.
Fantastic books.
Yes. And
Yeah,
and a lot of what we do is hypothesis.
yeah,
It's very hard. I mean, unless you have a physical Bigfoot someplace and
yeah,
you have it locked away and you can actually do experiments, whatever. And I'm sure these creatures, I've seen them, so I know they exist, and I'm sure our governments selectively have these things elsewhere, and they know like that's a Bigfoot, they know these things exist, but there's no the benefit is always military based in anything. Okay. So if you can figure out how to cloak people, then that makes your military cloaked. That
mm,
means you could be any place. So that's where all the financial
uh-huh,
benefits come into play. But in general, other than that, there are no benefits to
yeah,
fund this research. And if it is, it's on a DARPA level or a military grade level.
yeah.
And then we'll always be asking, but I wish we had proof of Bigfoots. And like, there's a whole bunch of people that go, we do. It's right there. But you idiots will never see it. So it's that catch-22
It
type of
it
thing.
is a catch-22, and it's funny really when some of the trolls online they come back at you and say, "You're just in this for the money," and I start laughing. I laugh out loud sometimes.
What money?
For what money?
What money?
What money are
I,
you
I
talking
did
about?
I did 3 hours of filming.
Yeah,
To it took uh, like 40 years
yeah.
basically to get 3 hours of filming, and then to get paid $300.
There you go.
Yay! I'm rolling in the dough right now. Now, if this was 1927, I'd be a millionaire, like whatever. But it's not. I'm rolling in dough right now. That being said, there is no freaking money in here. But I just wanted to go back to that Lauren Coleman thing about the,
Yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
alligators. And
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
father grew up in Brooklyn, New York,
Uh-huh.
and his grandmother used to send him as a child, and my father's younger sister used to send him from Florida live baby alligators.
Wow.
Okay, So he used to run around the house chasing his sister with a live baby alligator. And his sister used to hate it because they used to feed real, like, live food to
Yeah.
it, like goldfish or whatever. But there, a couple of them slipped away and fell into sewers and got into the sewers.
Yeah.
So the thought of knowing that my father had them delivered
Yeah.
up to New York from his grandmother, I'm like, alligators in the sewers? That's a
Well,
possibility.
it's I think the whole premise of the show, if I remember, was there was there would be a population explosion of alligators in the
Yeah,
sewers in the next 10 years. And my point about that really was it's not because I remember he got a bit panned for that at the time. It's not did he really say that, or are we talking about 4 hours of conversation with Lauren and some theoretical hypothesis based upon some questions that are fed to him, and they pick out population explosion, alligators in the sewers, edit, 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 and you have something sensational because it was about this uncomfortable relationship that we have to be in sometimes with television
right,
to sell essentially
right.
the interest in the subject, and
Yeah, I
that's
know. Yeah,
reframed very very awkwardly sometimes, either seem a little bit mocking or over sensationalized. So the alligators in the sewers for me, that was a symbol of that. I often wonder how
right.
much conversation they trolled through to pick that bit out
To get to that point.
and put it there
Um,
as the main
right.
premise of the show.
It's funny because I know somebody who is a researcher in the area where I have had my encounter, the first one in Connecticut. And they went out to a different area of the country where they had Bigfoot experience. They did film. Um, and they also did they sent stuff to a TV show. I'm not mentioning names. And they told their story. And in part, by sending them the TV show series,
Mhm,
when they saw it revealed,
mhm.
to the public, the producers of it flipped up on the show and put things out of context. So it made it look like they were really scared.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, when you're dealing with explaining this to producers in television, and I understand it, it's a market, and I get it. You got to
You've
sell
got to have
excitement,
something to watch.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I will be the first one to tell you that um, real investigations do take place, but so does rehearsals and retakes of
Yeah.
the scene that you just had. That the camera guy was in the middle of changing a battery and he missed it. So they're going to recreate it so that you understand what they have.
Yeah.
Then there are some people that are outright liars on television, and it's all made up because you know what, scaring stuff and the boogeyman, it sells. It makes a lot of money for people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but once you see something on the idiot box,
Yeah.
or in the movies, there are many people involved in that production. Unless it's a real documentary, and even them
Mm,
sometimes they have to pull or writer's embellishment on certain things.
of
So
course.
it's like, if you really want to experience a haunting or Sasquatch or a lichen or UFOs or all these things, or go get out of your homes and go look for them.
Yeah.
And if you're in the woods and everything goes quiet really quickly, guess what? It's not because a bear or a mountain lion's there.
Mm,
In general, there's a lot of other things that bears and mountain lions are afraid of.
mm.
And it's not just a hunter. That you will get signs everywhere that something is going on. And you may just have that encounter that where you can tell your story on TV, and then they can make you look like an idiot too.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean,
you know,
look, it's all by the by. And just to close off, really, I think it's important
sure.
for people to know that essentially the our days as investigators out there in the field are not interesting to watch. It has to be a combination of highlights and moments, because essentially, when I've been late monster hunting, for instance, when I've sat on a boat or I've sat next to the shore for 12 hours with some
Yep.
sandwiches and a flask and looked at the same area non-stop for that
Yep.
whole time quietly, not making a sound. It's not interesting. Not interesting for anybody to see. And if somebody was
Yeah.
filming it, it would make all of 10 or 20 seconds of footage because
Yep.
essentially nothing
100%.
happens. Nothing happens. You're out there field researching or you're just walking in woods
Hey.
for hours and
Yep.
hours and hours. And occasionally, very occasionally, you'll get some action. And then,
Well, yeah.
do you capture it on camera anyway? They have to make it entertaining. So I think for anybody out there who wants to see that kind of thing, you just have to take the rough with the smooth. Yes, it's real. Yes, it happens. But sometimes it has to be retranslated for your viewing pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? You don't want to watch 12 hours of anybody sitting there with a sandwich, because you know what? It what people don't realize, this is how short they are. First, most people have a short attention span to begin with. Oh, look, a bird. No, no, but but in general, they don't have the patience to sit there like you may sit there because you're interested in this research.
Uh,
You're trying to replicate a situation, and which can happen at any moment in time. Then again, there are some people that just happen to just have
mm,
all the luck in the world, and
mm,
they've had several experiences. Like, now what you should probably do is hook up with those people and say, okay, well, where? And we're not talking about those ones that make it up to be, for their
yeah.
15 minutes of fame. We're talking about people like, I know people that have constant interactions with UFOs, constant. Um, and I've been, I'm like, you can't have that many. And then you go out with them, and you're like, that
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
unusual. It's not a craft, it's whatever. So find the person that has the Loch Ness monster or the water monster interaction, and you know what? Go out with them for several days.
Mm,
But that's a lot of film, a lot of batteries, a lot of
mm,
time, and there's no guarantees in life except for death and taxes.
mm.
Other than that, I mean, like I said, I will take you to a place that we have where we've had several interactions. It's pretty good. There's a really strong chance you're going to, get that experience that you really want. And you will understand that even though in the UK, it may be just trees and rocks.
Mhm.
There's rhyme and reason to that, the tree structures and rock formations. I can't explain it why because I don't know, but Bigfoot definitely likes quartz, lots of it.
Uh-huh.
Um, One of our guys, my, you know, he constantly is being gifted at his home, um, quartz,
Uh-huh.
and
That's great.
he's taken it and put it away, and new pieces have appeared. And then so we've been doing a little experiments here with balls and string and
Mm.
not food. We're not going to gift with food because we don't
No.
want these things to be dependent, because if you're gifting someplace, you create a gifting spot, and you have food there, and then you leave, you sell your house, and the new people don't realize that you're supposed to be putting out a sweet cake every Tuesday night.
Uh-huh.
Well, guess what? Bigfoot's going to get pissed off at that and take it out of the new people, which could be a very good comedy, mind you. But that would be very interesting. But you know what? I'm just saying, get out, get out. My friend Chris says, get into the woods.
Yeah.
I say, get into the woods. You know,
Yeah.
it's you know what? It's good to get out now. There are not going to be that many people in there. The only thing I
That's right.
recommend everybody take, go with somebody. Go with
Always,
somebody.
always go with
If you
somebody.
go with if you go with children, which I would go, don't let them run out of your sight or too far
Mm-hmm.
ahead of you, and don't let them lag behind.
Mm-hmm.
There's weird stuff in the woods. I also recommend you say a blessing, whatever your religious base, and saying that we're protected by God, and nothing can attach to us, stay with us, go with us, and be with us, come home with us. Do it before you go. But, you may have that experience. You may be able to do those things. So, sorry about that. I keep getting phone calls coming in. So
No, that's fine. That's
that
not
was our
disturbing.
friend Ron Murphy.
It was. It was. Tell him he just killed our
Yes.
interview. No, he didn't. It didn't disturb at all. But listen, I think we'll leave it there. But it's always a
Cool.
pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Oh,
And
yes.
I just definitely will see what the Corona culture brings forward in the future. But I do very much hope to get over there pretty soon to join you guys in some conferences and on some expeditions. I think we'll have a fantastic time.
Yes. I know you have things in mind that you want to get done, and we're here to support you. I
Yeah.
think you do great research. You're a wonderful human being. I'm not not sucking up. There's nothing to suck up. You're one of I'm thankful for you being a part of my life and us connecting. I
Thank you.
appreciate your work, and I support what you do, and I will back it up to anybody, because you're one of the more genuine, real people out there that are really putting thought into the process, not making the stuff up or trying to sell X, Y, and Z. Yeah, you do have a book. I have a book. Ron,
Mm.
I'm not trying to sell you anything. If you want to buy my book, buy my book. If you want it, but I don't care. I'm telling you, this is what I've gotten, and I support you. You're the same way, but we're gonna try to get you those experiences,
Yes,
and
I
so
look forward to
just
it. I
make
very
sure
much look forward to it.
the other half of you knows that, like, look, we're not responsible if he doesn't come back and he's whisked away to a clan, but no, we'll
He
get you
might
home.
even send you some money. Um,
Yeah, mine too.
yeah. Could
But
you
yeah,
make sure he doesn't come back? That would be fantastic.
there's an extra quid in
Okay.
it if he doesn't show
Yeah,
back
that's
up.
right. That's right. Well, listen, our very best to you and your family there on your
Thank
holiday.
you.
Thank you for taking the time out to talk to me tonight, and have a wonderful time wherever you are. And
Yep.
yeah, stay open, stay hungry. It's been wonderful.
Oh, yeah, I got to lose my hungry. I got to lose about 100 Sasquatches. But I
Yeah,
thank you again, and I'm honored to be having this kind of conversation with you as well. And we'll definitely talk in a little bit as well.
awesome, my friend. Take care.
Blessings to
Bye.
you and the family. Bye.
Bye.